Well,
The president again calling on Congress to enact universal background checks for weapons purchases, to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. The president also naming a new nominee to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, former U.S. Attorney Steve Dettelbaugh.
law enforcement is a very tough job, and no person and no agency is perfect. But the president is right. The men and women of the ATF and the public that they protect deserve better support from us.
The president's first ATF nominee, David Chipman, was withdrawn last year when it became clear he would likely not be confirmed by the U.S. Senate over some controversial statements about guns. Monday, a big night for country music and its fans.
At the fan-voted CMT Music Awards on CBS, Jason Aldean and Carrie Underwood, as well as Cody Johnson, ended up as the night's big winners with 2 apiece.
Thank you, fans, so much for all the support you've given to this song and this video.
Aldean and Underwood, though, took home the night's top prize, Video of the Year, for their collaboration, If I Didn't Love You. Cody Johnson's wins included Male Video of the Year, and country icon George Strait took home his first ever CMT Music Award for Performance of the Year. Michelle Polino, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day. This is Governor Lou Leon Guerrero. Gas prices continue to rise, and we are here to help. We have revised Programan Salapi to provide a $300 direct cash assistance payment to most households. We heard your struggle, and we hope this relief will help during these difficult times. Applications will be accepted starting Tuesday, March 15, 2022. For more information, visit doa.guam.gov.
This ad is paid for by the Office of the Governor using government funds.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A great way to start a show on a Tuesday. A great way to start a show on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday if there were a show to start. All right, let's take a peek at Zemi Ikotny. Berada. New law will benefit students and community. Before we're faced with death and loss of international pandemic, we knew we had a fragile healthcare system. Boy, we've known that ever since. When it became apparent that we could be confronted with what could be an overwhelming healthcare crisis, one of the first things our governor did was provide for emergency licensure of healthcare personnel. Let's give our governor a hand, Jose. Too much, too loud. Later, people were brought in through the military and Federal Emergency Management Agency to help us deal with the crisis. Last week, Guam took a big step expanding its healthcare capacity with the Berada Act was signed into law. The Beretta Act supports the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education Professional Student Exchange Program, which allows students to access health care programs and receive substantial tuition support from their home state or territory. The program helps students in health professions attend school off-island. A scholarship office will be established at Guam Community College to administer the program, and students can get either public or private funds to help pay for the cost of school. In exchange for the financial assistance, they have to come home and work on Guam as part of their service requirement. For those who receive public funds, a 5-year obligation is expected. If private funds are used, the student would fulfill a term of service to the private provider. Students pursuing a degree in 10 different health fields can save between $34,100 and $133,600 on tuition over the duration of a health degree study. The bill was sponsored by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munga Barnes. Guam's healthcare demands have always exceeded the supply. By tapping into our existing partnership with WISH, we are opening a wonderful opportunity for our students to access quality health care education at a fraction of the cost, she said. Beretta means return or round trip. We hope that students see their time away getting an education as a temporary period and come back home to serve their island and bolster our healthcare system. A bill is good for students who might otherwise not have the resources to study in a field that requires off-island education, but it also helps a community in need of health professionals. All right, so that's the Daily News editorial for today. I don't need to even look for my blue pencil on that one. From there, we go to the card. And here's the card for today. Of course, we start out with systemic racism, Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And then we go from there to GWHS. And we now know what GWHS means. There are actually 2 of them on island. George Washington High School is the eldest. And then just recently we have Guam Woke High School. So it's GWHS and JoJo versus the girls. This was on the card yesterday as GW High versus the girls. JoJo's been added. And then we've got Jane Flores versus Innocent Helpless Humans. EBA versus GBME, Jesse Kanga versus Ethics, and so on. So it's kind of a replay of yesterday because we had so much on yesterday that I just made a dent in it without any real hope of actually finishing it up. So not too much to say about Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. I think you all know the difference now between the narrative and the truth, the narrative and the facts. And yesterday we spent a whole lot of time answering this question. When is it all right to kill an innocent, helpless human? And of course, the answer is very easy. The answer is always never, right? So that's the truth. You know, any person with any human sensibility, I don't even need to get into religion or morals or anything else. Any human sensibility knows the answer to that question is never. The narrative, however, is a woman has a right to do with her own body whatever she would. The state has no business telling a woman what to do with her body. The state has no business using a woman's body for something she doesn't want to use it for. The woman's right to privacy is violated when the state acts in terms of abortion. So that's a classic example of the truth and the narrative. You know, the woman and her right to choose is the red rice. the fact that it's never okay to kill an innocent, helpless human being, that's the facts. That's the truth. So just like Paul's quest to straighten folks out on that, there are a lot of folks on this island that want to straighten folks out on the other one. And that's the kind of the key issue of the day, and I hope it stays the key issue of the day for quite some time.
There was a movie a few years, about a decade back now, it's been that long, called The Matrix. I don't know if you've heard of that or watched that.
Yeah.
And there was an opportunity for the main character to take the red pill or the blue pill.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people remain in the blue pill zone. They do not want to wake up to the truth of what's happening. They want to keep doing systemic racism.
Yeah, they want to have their thought process manipulated because it's easier, less painful, more fun. Pay no attention to the red pill in reality.
Well, by the way, the red pill on Guam is orange.
Yeah, good. It took you a little while to lay the foundation, but good call, Jose. Very good, yeah. Okay, before I get into that, I got to go back to, once again, to the serial violations of our open government law, specifically Public Law 36-37. Today, the offender is the Department of Education. I'm going to show you their agenda for today. It's long, and it goes over to the second page. So someone spent a lot of time putting this agenda together. It goes all the way down to item 13, as it were, item 8, executive session. Item number 1, personnel matters. Some people just never catch on, do they? Item number 2, matters within the scope of Public Employee Management Relations Act, including collective bargaining. That's all right. But right above that, item 7, new business.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it. We don't know what the new business is. So when you see that, it creates the impression anything we haven't talked about before is new business. We can talk about it now and take whatever action we please. All right, and then I've also got the Visitors Bureau here. The Visitors Bureau will hold 2 meetings on Tuesday, April 19th, and I'm going to show you this agenda also.
Bigger font.
And no mistakes.
Wow.
Yeah, believe it or not, no mistakes. Yeah. Okay, before I get to Jane Flores, maybe I'll hang on to that and hold on to that till the end of the show, because there's so much to say. I start out with the Daily News versus Jojo Santo Tomas, who wrote a story for the Daily News where he says it was a long, wet, windy day, said league organizer Paul Claros, where have we heard that name before? But he was happy to welcome high school rugby back to the pitch. The girls play rugby sevens, which is a faster game that allows them to play 3 times each, while the boys play 15S, which is a much longer game. The Notre Dame Royals and the Tizen High Titans both finished 3-0. Tizen High Titans. On the day, etc. Titans coach Conrad Kerber said his girls exceeded his expectations following a setback 2 weeks ago. Okay. And there's a little bit more information about who played whom and what happened, and etc. The other 4 schools in the league, the Guam High School, etc., finished their 3-game day with 2 losses and a draw each. Guam High's 2-point bonus kept them out of the 3-way tie for last place. So there you saw both Guam High, which is now known as Guam Woke High School, and the Tizen Titans mentioned in this article, and the coach of the Titans, Conrad Kerber. So here we go again, folks. Jojo wrote the story, Jojo Santo Tomas. It's not what Jojo wrote. It's what JoJo didn't write. I wonder if he was there. And Conrad Kerber didn't exactly cover himself with glory either. Now, KUAM covered the same match. And here's KUAM's story. Tejan rugby coach calls for ban on transgender players after injuries at weekend match. Was it the same match?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, but, you know, some people think that some things are more important than others, and sometimes it's just, well, better not to talk about something.
Maybe Jojo Santo Tomas doesn't know that there's such thing as the internet.
Could be. Tejan rugby coach calls for ban on transgender players after injuries at weekend match. It's an issue that's been making national headlines. Should transgender athletes be allowed to play women's sports? Now, even this, now I know you're writing so people will understand and everybody knows, etc., but you don't need to put this transgender in there, you know? A transgender man is the same thing as a man. A man is a man is a man. We don't have to get into these modifications like, well, is he transgender? Is he LGBTQ? Or is he a cisgender man? A man is a man is a man, you know, and that's it. And the farther we stray from that, the deeper we get into the weeds. Like this rugby game is the classic example. Well, why is a man playing out there with the girls? Well, he's transgender. Oh, okay, then I guess it makes it all right. The fact that he's twice as strong, twice as fast, and twice as good a rugby player means nothing because he's transgender, right? So the issue arose right here on Guam over the weekend at Guam's High School Rugby League kickoff. Another season and concern surfaced for families as well as both coaches and players about a transgender competitor from the home of the Panthers. That's Guam Woke High School. Guam High's rugby team kicked off another season over the weekend, and concerns arose quickly from families as well as coaches and players about a transgender competitor from the home of the Panthers. 3 Tejan High School female rugby athletes were injured Saturday by a transgender player from Guam High. In light of the incident, Conrad Kerber, the head coach for the Tejan boys and girls rugby team, he's going to get in trouble. Conrad Kerber, the head coach for both Tejan boys and girls rugby teams. Can you do that? Can you have a separate team for boys and girls? Well, that sounds like discrimination, Jose. He's calling out the league to address the concerns. The aggressive nature that was witnessed clearly showed that it's a definite issue we have to deal with, Kerner said. I had 3 players that were injured in the first game against Guam High directly by that particular player. Now, I guess the player doesn't have a name, Jose. Probably not. Oh, it wouldn't be right to tell us his name.
We'll just ask them to start talking.
Yeah. Right now, we just have to come together as a group and discuss the proper path to take, discuss what the parameters are with allowing transgender males in full contact sports such as rugby. I could cut your conversation really short, Coach Kerner. No! Men have no business playing rugby with women. Boys have no business playing rugby with girls. The fact that they can't tell the difference between orange rice and red rice, the fact that you are controlled by the narrative doesn't make any difference at all. The fact is, you know, if you're going to let men play with the girls in rugby, girls are going to get hurt.
What's the threshold of how many injuries 3 wasn't enough?
3 wasn't enough, no. Well, we'll wait and see if anybody else gets hurt. Although no official decision has been made, and while discussions are ongoing, Kerber hopes the league will adopt the World Rugby Law transgender guideline, which states that transgender women may not currently play women's rugby because of the size, force, and power-producing advantages conferred by testosterone. Whoa. During puberty and adolescence, and the resultant player welfare risks serious injuries. How about just saying, no men playing with girls, no men playing with women, no boys playing with girls? Wouldn't that be easier?
Yeah, but you're going to sound like a biologist, and I know you're not one.
I'm just a talk show host. What do I know about things like that? Yeah. And there's another quote from Kerber. Body size, body strength, and the ability to apply force with that size and strength completely dominate any girl that I have on my team. So you recognize it, but, well, we got to talk about it, right? Now here's some folks that have a little bit of fortitude. The Academy of Our Lady's Guam team coaches unanimously agreed to enforce this rule over the weekend. In other words, the World Rugby League. No boys playing with the girls.
That is ironic.
Yeah.
But that's another discussion.
It is indeed. Yeah. So Academy's not going to play the silly game. Aiming to follow the footsteps of the home of the Cougars, Kerber says it's a matter of safety for his female athletes. It's purely a safety issue when we discuss transgender males playing in female sports at the youth level, particularly at this type of contact sport as well. I'm basically in line with the World Rugby guidelines regarding transgender males playing female sports. Basically across the world, it's not permitted, he said. To prevent any serious injuries throughout the season, Kerber stated the World Rugby Law should be acknowledged on Guam. It seems like it is by at least one school. It was purely with the size, force, and strength disadvantage that transgender males will have over females in this sport. There's no policy in place currently for outdoor leagues that bans the participation of transgender women in rugby. You know, for some things, it seems like you don't need rules, right? If you have a girls' team, do you really need to have a rule that said only girls can play on the girls' team?
See, this is what happens when you live in a world of relativity. Nothing matters. And then you have to have discussions like this that are givens. But they're not givens anymore because everybody wants to have everything relative.
Exactly. We've got to discuss this. My players will get through it and heal, Kerber said. We will use next 2 weeks so that we can heal properly. Guam Rugby Football Union and Interscholastic Association stated discussions are ongoing. Oh, I feel so much better.
I bet you they're not discussing the fact that this transgender person can dominate.
No.
They're discussing how's it going to look for us.
How do we play it in the media? Yeah. Who's going to take the fall for us? Who's going to be the voice of the association?
How do we apologize to this person?
KUAM News has reached out to Guam High Coach Joe Mancuso and did not respond as of news time. I got a feeling Joe is not going to have a whole lot to say about this.
Well, the fact that he didn't reveal that to the other coaches, that's a little bit of arrogance right there.
Absolutely. Well, either it's a little bit of arrogance or a classic example of systemic racism. He knows the agenda. He knows the narrative. There's nothing to say. A transgender woman is a woman. Now, going back to Kerner, here's what Kerner said in the story I read yesterday. Quote, I believe that we all should have the utmost respect for the life identity choices that are made by any person and embrace those choices. However, I must take a more firm stance on defending the safety of our youth athletes when those choices impede on the physical well-being of others. Sounds kind of on the left there, doesn't it? Yeah.
But you have to say these things these days, or else he could get fired from his job.
I suppose. Yeah. Well, the right answer here is no boys playing with the girls. Period. A one sentence or a two-word rules. No boys. Period. All right. Going on. I'm going to go over to another story here before I come back to the big one, but let's take a short break first.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, here's the next item on the card that I'm going to talk about. Jesse Kanga versus ethics. Jesse Kanga is the executive director of the Ethics Commission. You know, the Ethics Commission has taken 2 years to get airborne and is just barely clearing the trees at the end of the runway right now. They had a meeting last week, and I spent a fair time analyzing the news report on it because they had a list of, I think, 6 complaints that they'd received that they put on their agenda, and they were marked confidential, which is in accordance with the law. And then they had a private meeting for an hour and a half. And of course, this is a classic violation of the open government law. And which one of the media outlets covered that? Well, the Post called it a private meeting, but nobody picked up on it that it was a violation of the law. So I know the Vigilance Committee has been deeply involved in this, and let's hope that some media outlet figures that it's news when a committee that's supposed to be policing ethics can't comply with the open government law, which is exactly what happened. So there's a story, and this is a story in the Post. So Post, why are you letting them get away with this? Here we go. Frustrated ethics complainants admit to thoughts of suicide. The buildup of the Guam Ethics Commission has no doubt been long time coming, but it appears the weight of holding on to certain allegations has taken its toll on some residents. Since it began accepting complaints in early March, the Commission has heard from complainants who have admitted to harboring thoughts of suicide, according to Jesse Kanga, executive director of the Commission. Why is this the kind of thing that the executive director of the Ethics Commission feels it's important to put out to the public? Quote, we have recognized what we have recognized is from the start of receiving complaints, there have been several complainants who arrived frustrated, understandably, and admitted they carried thoughts of suicide, Commissioner Kanga told commissioners during a March 31 meeting. To prepare Commission staff to respond to these situations, the office has signed everybody up to go through grief counseling.
First, they violate open government law.
Yeah.
Now they're a hotline.
Now they're a hotline, yeah. It's what you call mission creep, right? Next, we'll have to have a assistant executive director in charge of mental health.
I'm hoping they can help me with my turkey during Thanksgiving.
The local law that reestablished the Ethics Commission is now many years old, but the commission hadn't held its inaugural meeting until September 2019. Even then, with financial and other resource issues, it has taken 2 years to set up the office to the point of being able to accept complaints. Once again, I'm going to get out my writ if I told you so. When I saw the names of the people on that commission, my analysis was there's no one here with anything that I call juice. Juice, meaning the ability to get involved and get things done and get the show on the road. Classic example of juice, Carl Gutierrez. If you want to get something done, give it to Carl Gutierrez and he'll get it done. You may not like the way he does it, but my gosh, he'll get it done. There was no one on that commission that had any juice at all. So, well, you know, we can't do anything because we got to have rules and regulations, and we don't have an office yet, and we've got to hire an executive director. We've got to hire and on and on and on and on. So now they finally have all this stuff, and the first meeting where they have complaints, they do the right thing by putting them on the agenda and saying they're confidential, and then they have an illegal executive session for an hour and a half. And the Post comes back and says, oh, yeah, Jesse Kanga told us what some of the people said. Now, I don't think it's even proper for him to broadcast what the complainants told him. He's probably saying, well, I didn't identify him. It was anonymous. But we know there are only 6 complainants, and sooner or later, if they prevail, their names will become public. Just stupid, just absolutely stupid, with so much work to do, and then skylarking around with something like this. Even then, with financial resources and other resources issues, it has taken the years, 2 years to set up the office. The Ethics Commission assisted 10 individuals between March 8 and March 30. From those individuals, 6 cases completed their intake process and were listed as confidential matters on the Commission's meeting agenda. Commissioners discussed those cases during the March 31 meeting, but it was done in private, which is okay, right? It's all right. This is John O'Connor, who's usually a pretty good reporter, but that was all right, John. It's okay to have private meetings. The office is also hoping to soon launch the Commission's webpage. This will give complainants an opportunity to review procedures and the complaint application form, as well as schedule an appointment to meet with intake staff, according to Kanga. Now, I'm not a webmaster. I've set up my own blog, by the way. I know how to do that. But I don't think you need an office to set up a website. That could have been done a year ago. I don't think you need an executive director to set up a website. I think the only thing you need to do is have a desktop and some basic knowledge of computers, and you could have done that. But here they are 2 years later. Oh, you know what? We're going to have a website. So if any senators are listening, I know there'd be a lot of heat if you abolish this boondoggle. But let's start thinking about it. It is a boondoggle and nothing more. All right, so much for ethics. If adherence to a strong sense of ethics depends on this commission, we'll be running the CNMI commission here, competition rather shortly. All right, next thing I've got here is Elizabeth Barrett Anderson versus the Guam Board of Medical Examiners. Without one hired, medical board members become investigators for residents' complaints. And then this was the product of a FOIA. No proof of investigative training provided through FOIA requests. So apparently the reporter here sent a FOIA to the Board of Medical Examiners saying, show us public records indicating what training board members have had for investigations. The Guam Board of Medical Examiners is unlike other medical boards in the states. On Guam, board members are regularly tasked to investigate complaints against local doctors. Dr. Nathaniel Berg, the board's chairperson, noted during its recent monthly meeting that in other jurisdictions, board members do not investigate or communicate with a complainant. That responsibility falls on a hired investigator and administrative staff trained in investigative practices and evidence gathering. The Guam Daily Post posed several questions to the medical board about investigative qualifications of board members, the investigative procedures and protocols followed, and how the integrity of investigations is maintained. Although there were no initial responses from board members, with the exception of, quote, no comment from Public Representative Phil Flores, the board received answers through a subsequent Freedom of Information Act request posing the same questions. Budget constraints are the primary reason the board is without a full-time investigator. For this reason, board members often fill the role. The Attorney General's office used to provide investigative and prosecution services to the health professionals licensing boards until May 14, 2015, when Attorney General Elizabeth Barrett Anderson instructed all health professional licensing boards that while the Attorney General's office will continue to provide legal consulting services and will defend public officials in the event they are sued, sometimes but not always, provided they were acting in good faith, the GBME must procure investigative and legal services to prosecute disciplinary matters on their own, Flores said in response to the FOIA. So Elizabeth Barrett Anderson pulled the plug on this. And since that time, no one has taken the initiative to put it back. Leaving. Are you leaving already? Or you're not leaving until January? Maybe you'll be leaving in January. In fact, I think that's his name, isn't it? Leaving in January? Since then, Flores said the board has relied on Department of Public Health and Social Services and Health Professional Licensing Office to procure legal services. It's a task that had not even been seriously attempted until recently, and then not without difficulty. As of this date, GBME does not have counsel available to prosecute disciplinary complaints. The declaration Flores reference was filed in a case involving a 5-year-old boy who died at Guam Memorial Hospital in October 2018. Now, I wonder who that boy was. It was made before the Superior Court and discussed the complaint, investigation, and disciplinary process. Currently, board members consult with counsel on various aspects of investigating complaints. However, board members speak with the complainant, which really makes no sense at all. It's like saying, well, we got a criminal case today. Let's send one of the jurors out to investigate, to interview the defendant and see what he can tell us. Board members speak with the complainant and make preliminary determinations on the merits of the complaint, according to the Health Professional Licensing Office initial protocols for handling disciplinary complaints. These board protocols came under question earlier this year after a sexual assault complaint filed the board was, quote, lost. Although it was later recovered, it was noted that the complaint was removed from the GBME office. Well, I suppose by the investigating member. during that oversight hearing with the legislature's Committee on Health, it was revealed that the GBME did not have its process in writing. This whole outfit cries out for a lawyer who's assigned to the GBME to get all of this work done. In fact, the HPLO office just developed standard operating procedures for the discipline complaint investigation process. According to the document provided to the Post, HPLO standard operating procedures on the matter were submitted March 4th. When the board does not have a dedicated investigator on staff, board members must serve in the role of investigators. The chair appoints a single board member or can appoint himself or herself to work in consultation with counsel to gather evidence and interview witnesses, including the complainant and the licensee. The procedures state, the GBME provided limited documents to demonstrate the qualifications of board members have to investigate complaints, like letters renewing appointments to the board and confirmation documents for each board member from the governor and legislature. No certification of investigative training was included. However, FOIA does not require a public agency to create new documents that do not already exist, Flora stated. And that's true. That's exactly true. The idea is that the FOIA picks up documents in existence, and once again, sometimes what a FOIA doesn't disclose that's important. If you don't have the document, sometimes that is the news. Section C pertains to personnel, medical, or similar files, the disclosure of which would constitute an unwarranted invasion of privacy, the so-called personnel matter exception. Section 8 relates to the home address and telephone number of any person whose occupation is subject to regulation, etc., or any public official or a government employee or any member of a government board, unless such person gives express permission to disclose such information. Section I stated, all existing privileges or confidential record or other information expressly protected under the law shall not be abrogated by this act. The GBME has noted during a past morning board meeting that an investigator or trained consultant would be hired in some complaints. When asked if a professional investigator reviews each complaint prior to closing a case, however, Flores responded with his previous point. FOIA does not require a public agency to create new documents that do not already exist. The board's recent SOP spells out the working relationship it is meant to have with legal counsel on complaints. The investigating board member works with legal counsel to evaluate the complaint, explore whether settlement is an option, assist in drafting the accusation, statement of issues, or settlement, and otherwise assist in prosecution of the accusation in case of a licensee or statement of issues in case of an applicant for licensure, reads the SOP. The GBME's response to the FOIA indicated they follow both SOPs to ensure and maintain the integrity of an investigation. However, questions pertaining to records were met with the same response. These included requests to disclose how many complainants have board members investigated, which were not reviewed by a professional investigator, the number of complaints received by the current board, how many were closed due to insufficient evidence, how many closed in favor of the complainant, and how many were closed in favor of the doctor. FOIA does not require a public agency to create new documents that do not already exist. So this is a thorough job done by the Post. Why didn't you do that? Why don't they do the same thing with the Ethics Commission?
You see the reporter's name? That's why.
And the reporter is?
Jolene Tovis. She can really dig.
She knows how to do it, huh? All right. Well, good information, Jose. Let me just take one more look at this here.
Just for those reading along, the article stops at a point, and everything else you read about the sections are online on the Post.
Not in the press.
Paper, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So let's go back to the question of the day, and I'll pose it one more time. When is it okay to kill a helpless, innocent person? Answer: never. I'm going to let that cat out of the bag. All right, let's take a short break here.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla. Giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla. We're already Pica's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
All right, so here we go again. On Friday, 5 Republican senators, 4 Republicans and a Democrat, right?
2 Democrats.
2 Democrats.
Amanda Shelton and Talena Nelson.
That's right, Amanda Shelton and Talena Nelson. I guess Amanda Shelton's trying to rehabilitate herself. Of course, since they introduced it on Friday, it didn't make the media until Saturday. Nobody paid any attention to it. And the pro-abortionists came roaring back on Monday and so far dominate the news cycle. Leading the pack was Jane Flores, who is a government employee, a member of the governor's cabinet. Jane is the director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, which Jose refers to as, by its acronym, BWA, which is probably quite appropriate. And Jane came out really strong. She came out with a statement of the Bureau of Women's Affairs Director Jane Flores on introduction of Guam Heartbeat Act of 2022. And the first word in her article kind of tells you her statement kind of tells you an awful lot about what the statement's about. The first word is we. So it's as much about Jane Flores as it is about the issue. People who refer to themselves in the first person plural tend to be that way. I've occasionally caught myself starting the show by saying we always start with a second, but we don't. I do.
You do.
I do, yeah.
I might follow along in my head, but it's not in tandem.
Exactly. And I'm not the editor of a newspaper. I'm not pregnant. I have no business using the word we. All right. We are extremely disappointed with the introduction of Bill 291-36. And then she goes on to say, women have the right to confidential, affordable, unrestricted access to the full range of reproductive health care options available in 2022, including the option to terminate a pregnancy. Now, this is classic 1984 George Orwell. How can killing somebody ever amount to health? It is the classic example of the opposite of health. When you die, no more health. When that little baby is killed, no more health.
terminating the unborn baby is a reproductive health issue.
Exactly. They keep peddling this garbage over and over again. It's a woman's right to proper reproductive health. Women have a right to confidential, affordable, unrestricted access to the full range of reproductive health options.
It's almost like she never read the bill.
Yeah. It's almost like she never read Dick and Jane if she can't handle this one. A woman has the right to decide what is best for her own health and the health of someone else. And that includes the right to control what happens within her body. It's a decision that she should make in consultation with whoever she trusts and deems important to make it with her. It's not something that the government or anyone else should decide. Certainly not the other person involved in this, known as the baby.
She still has not addressed the bill, though, but
yeah,
she's still talking.
Going on, I spent a little time with this yesterday. Going on a new matter. Now she establishes a gigantic straw man and just beats the hell out of that straw man.
It's a bonfire.
Yeah. If we really want to be pro-life, and Jane, nobody wants to be pro-life. We want to be anti-abortion. Another one of the euphemisms. Well, you can be pro-life, you can be pro-choice, which is kind of like, well, you can be pro-Cubs, you can be pro-Braves. We're all good people. They're all legitimate. No. No, they're not. If we really want to be pro-life, we as a community need to worry about the children on this side of the womb. Children like the 5-year-old boy who died recently because of neglect. Children on this side of the womb. Forget about those on the other side. Being pro-life is addressing the nearly 2,000 children in our foster care system. Now, Pete Scrow took her to the cleaners on this one. But, if your heart is pure and your cause is righteousness, you're not really strictly bound to the facts. You can exaggerate to prove your point. The sponsors of the Guam Heartbeat Act should focus their pro-life efforts on the following.
It's not a pro-life bill.
No. 1, improving, expanding, or establishing social programs to make raising children easier and more affordable. Yeah.
Didn't the governor just do that?
She did. 2, bringing Guam families out of poverty.
Isn't that why we're in a sole authority health emergency?
I think so. 3, ensuring that contraception is acceptable and affordable on island. One of the main ways to prevent abortion is to provide accessible birth control options in a community. 4, addressing the underlying causes of our drug and alcohol addiction problems and the crimes they create. We have high rates of sexual assault and domestic violence related to these addictions. Now, this is a classic straw man, and I suppose that there may be a few folks that don't understand the straw man fallacy. But here's the straw man fallacy. A and B are in an argument. A's argument is stronger than B's. So B invents a new argument that's flawed, addresses the new argument that he can beat, and then points out to A that, well, I met your argument and I bested you on it. When really all he did was just beat the straw man up. And that's exactly what Jane is doing here. But if I kind of did the same thing with her as I'm doing with Amanda Shelton, you recall when Amanda Shelton passed 3 times on the override of Bill 311, as you were Bill 11, I didn't go into the explanation of the strategic reasons that senators pass so they can see which way the wind is blowing and are able to vote, quote, vote right on the bill or the override. I said, from now on, I take you at your word. If you can't vote when your name is called on the roll call, I will just assume that you're too stupid to be able to make up your mind until you have to vote. And in Amanda's case, it took her 3 times to do it. So I'm going to take Jane at her word right here. If all of these things were accomplished, then no one would ever want an abortion. There'd be no need to, right?
Yeah, but that's not the intention.
That's not the intention here at all,
No.
is it? But I mean, if that's the case, if that's your argument, Jane, okay, let's assume for the purposes then, let's assume as lawyers say, let's assume arguendo that these things have been accomplished. Then we could have an absolute ban on abortions because there wouldn't be any necessity for abortions, correct?
No, but abortion is a right.
Yeah, you can't abolish my rights. It doesn't matter what's going on in the community. Well, then why did you advance these 4 points? Well,
I had to write something.
I saw The Wizard of Oz last night, and I was really captivated by the scarecrow.
Look, a squirrel.
Was it the scarecrow, Jane, or was it the lion?
Right.
All right, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to the Florist Follies.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The president launches a new gun crackdown. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, with a federal regulation aimed at weapons assembled from parts.
Gun kits with parts that can be ordered and assembled at home shoot and kill like firearms, President Biden says.
A felon, a terrorist, a domestic abuser can go from a gun kit to a gun in as little as 30 minutes.
The president is rolling out a new federal rule that would require makers of gun kits to include serial numbers on parts and background checks for purchases like other firearms. The rule is intended to clamp down on so-called ghost guns, weapons that law enforcement say are nearly untraceable.
Fox's Jared Halpern reports a court's challenge to the new regulation is likely. The State Department last week suggested all non-emergency personnel leave Shanghai, China. Now it's in order as that city enters the 3rd week of a lockdown over COVID-19. Scientists report the extra contagious BA2 variant of the coronavirus, known as stealth Omicron, does not appear to cause more severe disease, but they are keeping an eye on another, XE, a combination of the BA2 and the original Omicron variants. The mayor of the Ukrainian city of Mariupol says bodies carpet the streets of his city. He believes 10,000 people have died there since the Russian invasion, but fears that number could double.
A recently escaped resident described the horrors in Mariupol.
We thought the worst thing is an air bomb, but in fact, the most terrifying thing is a tank. There's nothing worse than a tank.
And speaking of tanks, as that 8-mile Russian convoy heads south towards that eastern Donbass region where we expect the new Russian offensive, a senior U.S. defense official tells Fox News several Western nations are considering increasing the types of weapons they will send to Ukraine, and that could include tanks to combat this next fight.
Fox's Griff Jenkins in western Ukraine. America is listening to Fox News.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
President Biden headed to the grain belt.
White House spokeswoman Jen Psaki said the president's visit to an ethanol plant in Menlo, Iowa today is part of a new rural infrastructure tour kicked off by his Interior Secretary Monday in Colorado. As part of this, the White House released a playbook with guidance on how rural communities can apply for infrastructure bill money.
President Biden will make an announcement on actions to reduce the impact of Putin's price hike and build a better America with investments in rural communities from the bipartisan infrastructure law.
The Des Moines Register notes that many in Iowa hope that announcement is suspension of the summertime ban on gasoline blended with 15% ethanol to help out certain farmers and biofuel providers. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
California's largest utility, Pacific Gas and Electric, agreeing to pay more than $55 million to avoid criminal prosecution for two major wildfires, last year's Dixie Fire and the 2019 Kincaid Fire in Sonoma County, which fire investigators say were started by aging power lines in Northern California. The National Urban League, in its annual report, says the state of Black America is grim. While black people have made gains in economic indicators and measures of health, they've fallen further behind whites in education, social justice, and civic engagement. The group says systemic racism is to blame. The NBA playoffs begin tonight with the first play-in game.
The Cleveland Cavaliers and Brooklyn Nets will open things up tonight. Winner of this game punches their ticket into the traditional NBA playoff bracket as the 7th seed in the Eastern Conference. The loser will get another chance to advance on Friday to take the 8th seed. They'll face the winner of tomorrow's showdown between the Charlotte Hornets and Atlanta Hawks. The loser of that one is eliminated from postseason contention. Also coming up tonight, the LA Clippers facing the Minnesota Timberwolves. Same scenario for the West bracket. Loser faces the winner of tomorrow's action between the San Antonio Spurs and New Orleans Pelicans. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
So here we are, second half of Tall Tales. We're coming right back to Floris's Follies. And I shouldn't hang all of it, I suppose, on Jane Flores, because I've got another article that I'll get to. And several others have signed off on that article that ought to get the same credit as Jane Flores. That would be Anita Areola, Ellen Bez, Annie Bordallo, Mariana Cook-Wen, Lisa Dames, Monica De Oro, Regine Bisco-Lee, Carlotta Leon Guerrero, Stephanie Lorenzo, Michelle Wakalo, Vanessa Williams, and Kiana Yabut. Vanessa Williams, where have I heard that name before? Vanessa Williams really lays it out for you, as to, we can talk about constitutional rights and women's reproductive health, etc. But I think Vanessa kind of lays it out really clearly. And this is what she was quoted as saying. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. In other words, it's a matter of convenience. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm pregnant, but I wanted to do something. I wanted to take the new job. I wanted to go to Europe. I just didn't feel like being pregnant in the summertime, on and on and on. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives.
And that line drawn is the womb.
Exactly.
Because out of sight, don't have to hear them, don't have to see what's happening. Yeah. It's okay.
So once again now, Jane builds this straw man, and she has 4 bullet points. The first of which is the being pro-life is addressing the nearly 2,000 children in our foster care system. Wrong. The sponsors of the Guam Heartbeat Act should focus their pro-life efforts on the following. Here's the first one. Improving, expanding, or establishing social programs, making raising children easier and more affordable. So she actually poses it as a choice. If you can't do that, then it's better to, and this is gruesome, it's better to kill the child in the womb.
Well, not every time, I've been to one of these sessions, hearings where this group of pro-abortionists are up against a bill. I think this was the dismemberment bill back in 2017, 18, something like that. And the only argument they had, they didn't talk about dismemberment. They didn't talk about the baby in the womb. They talked about foster children. They talked about abuse, sexual abuse. They talked about low education of our youth, which is great, but not what we're talking about in a dismemberment bill.
But the way Jane poses it here, these are 2 reasonable alternatives. If you can't do this, then do that.
Exactly. And my mindset was like, so are you advocating for dismemberment by saying, because all this stuff is happening, we need to get rid of them in the womb before it happens to them?
It's better for the child.
Better.
Yeah.
So why don't they just come out and say that?
Yeah, and that's the hint. She also mentions if we really want to be pro-life, we as a community need to worry about the children on this side of the womb. Children like the 5-year-old boy who died recently because of neglect.
If only he was terminated on the other side of the womb,
then this wouldn't have happened.
Never happened.
Yeah, it's very logical, very cold, very logical, right? Yeah, but it's the other thing about it. It's also very wrong. I think that we all know that it's wrong to kill another human. I mean, it's almost every society that's ever walked the earth has had a prohibition about killing other humans. You just don't do it. And we make exceptions, self-defense, war, etc. But we don't get into silly stuff like this. Well, improving or expanding social programs, if you can't do that, then abortion's the best thing to do. Yeah, so.
Now, I have a lot of asides because I want to make this point that it's just not about out of the womb. Let me answer this real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll come back to Jose in just a second. Jane goes on to say April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, ironically. The Guam Heartbeat Act makes no exception for victims of rape or incest. It negates every single piece of legislation this legislature has passed that purports to be in support of sexual assault victims. The sponsors are in effect saying no victims of sexual assault. Saying no to victims is in effect saying to victims of sexual assault, we don't care about what happened to you. Did you want to finish what you're saying?
Just real quick, because we have a very important person on the line, but about the border, the line drawn between in the womb, out of the womb. Back in 2014, we had I believe it's called the Born Alive Act, or Born Despite an Abortion Act.
Yes.
That was being offered up as a bill. And as a public person, Lulian Guerrero went up and testified against the bill.
Yes.
And her citations were it would cost too much, the baby would not be, it wouldn't be worth spending the money for the baby, the parents would be burdened by somebody who probably could have been injured by the abortion, which she admitted is a very heinous thing because this baby would have been disfigured, possibly. But that was a real testimony against even providing care for somebody outside of the womb.
Yes.
And this is very interesting. And this is all documented because it was a public testimony, and it's on YouTube as well because it was a public testimony. A lot of people don't know about this. 2014.
I remember it. And Tim ran some stuff in Jungle Watch on it, too.
Thankfully, the bill passed, and we do have a Born Alive Act where a baby survives an abortion, despite an abortion, is able to receive medical care.
Yeah. And we've talked about Mike Carey on the show here, and the wonderful result that Mike Carey got when he got involved in a situation like that. Well, I've got a lot more to go here on Floris's Follies, but I could go do the rest of the program, but I don't want to keep people waiting too long, so I'm going to break and take calls. And right now, I've got Senator Duenas, who's one of the sponsors of the heartbeat bill, and I've got R. Carl, and let's see, I've got somebody else trying to get in here. Just hang on just a second here. Pete Scrow. All right, well, we got quite a trio here. Okay, Senator Duenas, the most dangerous man in the room, and Pete Scrow. So you're number one in the batting order there, Senator Duenas.
Half a day, Your Honor, Honorable Marine, great senator, and my favorite talk show host. You know, I know Pete's online, so he can promote it himself, but I encourage the Total Tales international audience to go to Ray's show from this morning in the 9 o'clock hour, because Attorney Peter Scrow did a magnificent job in the interview with Ray, uncovering everything that people might want to know about the Heartbeat Act of 2022. But I just wanted to make three observations in terms of what James Flores puts out. And thank you for covering this as extensively as you are. It's an extremely important matter, and you can see the vitriol and the anger coming from those who really are pro-abortion at any cost. First of all, Senator, I've been sending around something that demonstrates the absolute callous and disregard, I think, and recklessness from Jane Flores on the official Facebook page of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, that encourages women and girls, perhaps, I'm sure both, that if they need assistance with terminating a pregnancy, to go to doctors in Hawaii, one of which I think has written extensively about Guam's proposals and Guam's laws being anti-abortion in order to be able to secure the ability to do so. And we believe that this is very dangerous because it's probably leading them to receive some sort of pills that would induce in terminating a pregnancy. Now, there have been doctors that have claimed that they've had to do surgery and other procedures on individuals who had a horrible outcome from taking black market, basically, pills to induce an abortion without being directly under the attention of a medical professional. I think that's absolutely unethical and completely wrong, and shows exactly what the effort is here, and they will go leaps and bounds to do this. And there is abortion happening on Guam, so that matter of this being moot is not moot at all. In fact, this law, I think, is so important. Bill is so important to become law, and possibly even other amendments on issues such as this. You know, earlier in the year, Senator, we blocked a telemedicine bill that looked like it was a loophole, trying to ensure that this type of procedure could happen. It went back to committee and it's never seen the light of day since. The second thing I'd like to say is, with all those great write-ups about what to do in terms of staving off, abortion and taking care of children on this side, I was so disheartened. The Regalu Foundation under former First Lady Christine, we raised a lot of money and built a foster care home up in Barragán Heights, a beautiful foster care home. And I was talking to some individuals today that actually helped build that and furnish it and get it operational. And under this administration, time after time, they have never opened the doors. And it was supposed to be put out for an RFP so that Catholic Social Service, a private organization, which it's mostly private organizations, Your Honor, here that are really loving and taking care of these children. But instead, it became a government operation. So, and the excuse is, well, we don't have time to get out the RFP. We've got to do an RFP. Now it's expanding government operations and hiring people from public health and I believe UIA to run this operation where perhaps there's 6 children there now. Finally, it's up and running. And I guess we got to say, praise God, that there's children there. But here we go again, more government, and not leaning on these nonprofit organizations, people like Harvest House and Bethany and all these others. There are plenty of people, Your Honor, who are out here wanting to love these children. And that's our message. Our message is about love and about the unborn. We care about everybody, the whole person, but we care deeply about that unborn child who deserves the right to live. In closing, Senator, I just, to point out the heinous situation that exists with a 5-year-old who lost his life, under a circumstance really where it's the fact that under this administration, the drug epidemic has become so much worse. With crystal methamphetamine down to as low as $100 for a gram on the streets. And unfortunately, the father of that child, and it's proven to be so because it's in the testimony of the reports, was so high on meth for several days, actually fell asleep while supposed to be watching the child. And that's how that child died. That child didn't die because of the fact that, we got to determine who should and who shouldn't have children. The child tragically died because of the fact that this island is currently under the scourge of an epidemic of methamphetamine, and supposedly we're safe. And now executive order after executive order is going out to recruit officers, to bring people back, to give $10,000 bonus, but we're safe and we don't have any problems. The HIDA, the high intensity drug, thing that was done under the Cabo administration, which would bring much needed resources and federal resources to Guam, was ignored throughout this entire administration, and they were touting it on another media today. And shame, really, because James McDonald was the one who actually brought that to Guam under Homeland Security. And it was ignored, and now we're supposed to be piggybacking off of Honolulu, where the resources should be here on Guam. Shame, Your Honor. This is what's happening out there. And I know I'm a little bit excited about this, but I can't help it because these are nothing but excuses, and it's completely unacceptable. And I certainly hope you understand a little bit of my raised voice here.
I kind of empathize with you, Chris. I've been known to raise my voice on this show concerning some of this foolishness myself, so you're in good company.
Well, there's so much else to say, Your Honor, but I know there's wonderful callers behind me, and I'd really like to listen. And thank you for everything you're doing on this issue.
Okay, Chris, good talking to you, as usual. So long. Okay, and next we have, leading up to kind of preparing the ground for Pete's Grow, we have the most dangerous man in the room. Yes, sir, our Carl, let us have it.
Hey, Bob. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in that this opposition to this bill seems to be the continuation of a very anti-child attitude, and especially anti-children of color attitude on the left, that has resulted in over 62 million children being aborted since Roe versus Wade in 1973. And, if they'd have had their way, my mother, because, I grew up in a poor family. My father was alcoholic. My mom had mental issues. And we were extremely poor. We didn't have a car until I was 18. We lived in wooden tin shacks. And they probably would have advised my mom, you should just abort, because you can't take care of this child. And Dr. Ben Carson, his mother was 13 years old, living in poverty when she had him, and then eventually his brother, and he eventually became a world-famous neurosurgeon. His brother became an actual rocket scientist. And, the examples are millions and millions of them across America and even the world. Even on Guam, there are thousands and thousands of people who rose out of poverty and very difficult circumstances. And there is a solution to this. If I'm not for parents who feel incapable of raising children to be forced to raise children. There's a solution. It's called adoption. I worked as a social worker for a while, and I saw up close. I dealt with adoptive parents and saw the tremendous desire to adopt children and to give love to children. And I think you cited at one time that there's a 5-year waiting period on Guam for adopting children. And I think the kindest thing that someone can do for an unborn child is, although it's extremely difficult. I was there at the birth of 3 of our 4 children, and it's not for sissies. I'm telling you, giving birth, but give birth to the child and put him or her up for adoption and help them find a better life. That, I think, is the 2 greatest acts of love that any parent can do, in my view. But anyway, that's my 2 bits, Bob. I listened to Pete Skro. I'm interested in what he has to say.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Carl. You're still the most dangerous man in the room. Okay, we're going to go to Chicago, Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch, and for the last couple innings here, we'll listen to Pete Skro.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So here we are, Chicago, Wrigley Field, the 7th inning stretch. That means we got 2 more innings to go. And in the on-deck circle, we have Pete Skro. Pete, pick up a bat and step in the batter's box. Take a swing.
Well, thank you, Senator, for allowing me to call into your show. I was listening to you earlier, and I actually was doing some work, but you used a term that compelled me to make the phone call, and it was when you started talking about the straw man.
Well, Jane is pretty good with straw.
I wanted to make a few points, Bob, and I think that you and the audience will appreciate this. First of all, I want to make it absolutely clear that I believe that I have a history with respect to any type of public debates. That I have absolutely no problems with respect to public debates, but I do have a problem when the person that is debating you, and I'm just going to call it like it is, when they're lying, when they're misrepresenting the facts. And when I read Jane Flores's release, I read it once, I read it twice, I read it 3 times, and I couldn't help. And I'm sure you can appreciate this as an attorney yourself, but I then went and I looked at also the Enabling Act of what created the Bureau and the laws that she's supposed to follow. And I think it's very important for the audience to understand that Jane works for us. I'm a private citizen. She's a public official. We pay her salary. She's governed by a set of laws, which I feel she's violating, because there is absolutely nothing in the Enabling Act that created her bureau that talks about abortion. And I want to go over a few things of serious misleading mistakes that she makes in her statement. I also want to get into where she blames the legislature for her failures. And I think that she needs to be called out on it. She talks a little bit about how first she says there's 2,000 children in the foster care system. Bob, that's absolutely false. There are not 2,000 children in the foster care system. There are approximately 510 children in the foster care system. What Jane, I think, is hiding is that annually there are reported about 2,000 child abuse cases. We just heard that again on the news today. I think that our people know over and over again, just by reading every day in the paper, that we're having little kids with broken bones, with being beat up, and a lot of it is related to meth, a lot of it is related to drug abuse, a lot of what has the Bureau of Women's Affairs done about that? Instead of blaming the legislature and instead of blaming senators, Jane has had over 3 years as director of this agency. This governor has had over 3 years to take care of these problems. And when you alluded to those 4 points that she brings at the bottom of the page, I look at that and I see her again blaming the legislature for those 3 points that supposedly justify an abortion. However, I think what Jane fails to understand is that she is in a position of power. Her bureau is a part of the executive branch that had over $1 billion in the past 2 years to take care of those 4 points and has done absolutely nothing. And I would invite her to call in if she's listening to defend this, because I have never read anything until now, Bob, from the Bureau of Women's Affairs. The only thing that I have seen is their own propaganda on their own official government website of inviting our women to go to Hawaii, giving phone numbers to doctors in Hawaii, and saying that, okay, let's bring medication over here. Let's have discussions on telemedicine. Let's bring it to district court. Let's just fight about this. But they just nobody's talking about that child. And I'm not even gonna say the word fetal heartbeat. I'm gonna say a human being child's heartbeat. And I think they missed that entire point. The other thing, Bob, that is very disingenuous in her writing is when she says that this act is moot. It is absolutely not moot. I exchanged some messages with Tom Shea today. Tom is a very respected physician on this island and very well liked by a lot of people in our community. It's no secret that just recently Tom saved a woman's life who had a botched abortion from a medication abortion. It's happening now. It's not moot. Abortions are happening constantly because, unfortunately, her argument that we don't have an abortionist on island, therefore we don't have abortions, is absolute fallacy. We have medication abortions. We have medications that are being imported into our island that are being just circulated like it was candy. And, you know, take it, kill that baby. And as far as the Heartbeat Act, I'm not going to name the talk show host, but I was very disappointed in a talk show host yesterday in talking to Anita Ariola, saying that, you know, these people that are behind the Heartbeat Act should be heartfelt. Well, the reality is I invite Jane to call in. Tell me the truth. Isn't it a fact that abortion stops a baby's heart? There's no, you can't dispute it. We are not living in 50 years ago of Roe versus Wade, and I'm sure you can appreciate that, Bob. So I'm just a little concerned at the way that she has started this debate, that it's been disingenuous. And like I mentioned in an email that I sent to Jane, I had a wonderful conversation with an attorney that represents the ACLU, a wonderful conversation the day after the introduction of the act. We sat down, we had coffee. Of course, she's pro-choice. I respect that, but she was honest with me. I was honest with her. We respected each other. We had a cordial conversation. Nobody called anybody out. Nobody blamed anybody. It was just a very cordial conversation that, hey, it may come down the road where we might face each other in the community, that we might have differing views. Can we be reasonable and rational about it? And it was a wonderful, wonderful conversation. But reading Jane's email was so attacking, and it's almost like every other word was so exaggerated and so sensationalized that I felt it was extremely misleading to our people.
I hear you, Pete.
And I just want to make one final comment. I heard, first of all, I will say this. As far as Attorney Anita Ariola, I respect Anita. I personally, and this is just my personal view, I consider Anita Ariola one of the best attorneys on this island. But I heard her on a talk show the other day, and she started alluding to that the Heartbeat Act creates confusion, that you might even be subject to a crime if you even speak about abortion. That's absolutely false. I wrote this specific provision. There's a specific provision within the Heartbeat Act that protects your freedom of speech under the United States Constitution and the Organic Act. And also the other thing that they keep trying to allude to, a criminal act. There is no criminal act under this bill. It gives the power to the people. It takes away from government being able to resolve issues related to abortion. And I think that it's rather insulting that Jane would want to say, you know, don't give it to the people. Leave it to the government to decide. Well, that's clever of her, because the reason why she doesn't want to give it to the people is because if you give it to the people, then there's no constitutional arguments against it. That's already been decided by the Supreme Court. It's already been said. It's been decided recently by the Texas Supreme Court. So I don't know who's giving her advice, but I would encourage her not to issue press releases like that again.
Well, on the other hand, Pete, maybe it's good that she does, because sometimes people pull the curtain back and you see their actual intentions instead of their purported intentions.
Yeah, that's basically the points I wanted to make, Bob. I don't know if you had any questions for me. I'd be more than happy to answer them, but that's basically it.
Well, you spent a little time over there in the on-deck circle, Pete. Then you stepped into the batter's box and you smacked a hard drive to left field, and you got all the way to third base with it. So so the next, you're a little more familiar with the ballpark now. Maybe the next time you come to bat, you'll be able to smack it right out of the park.
Well, thank you, sir, for having this opportunity to speak on your show.
Good talking to you, Pete. Thanks again. So long. Yeah, so pretty good baseball player there. Yeah, he can hit a curveball. Jane can't throw anything but a curveball. Good thing Pete was the batter. Yeah, Jane wouldn't know how to throw a fastball right down the middle, no matter how much instruction she had. So I want to get back to rape or incest. Now, this is the next part of Jane's follies. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Ironically, the Guam Heartbeat Act makes no exception for rape or incest. Well, I'm going to get a little bit on her here for composition. What is ironic about that? I don't see any irony there at all.
Her use of irony?
Yeah. So she thinks it's ironic to have a bill dealing with incest because it's Sexual Awareness Month. We should wait until next month to do it. And then she grossly exaggerates again. She says the heartbeat bill negates every single piece of legislation this legislature has passed to be in support of sexual assault victims. Every single piece of legislation. It's like the first Section 1 heartbeat bill. All bills dealing with sexual assault victims are hereby repealed. That's what she's saying. I don't think it repeals a single bill. And of course it doesn't. So what she's trying to convince you here is this, that you cannot have real legislation dealing with sexual assault unless you allow for abortion of children created by rape or incest. That's what she's trying to say. And of course, this, again, is another straw man. I don't know what the figures are, but, you know, we see an awful lot of rapes, don't we, here? I think we're second in the United States as far as rapes per capita. And there was one really sad rape that made the newspaper where a 12-year-old girl was raped and became pregnant. And in fact, that's when Jane went out and beat the bushes looking for an abortionist. So I suspect that there are pregnancies that result from rape. I don't know what the rate is, but I can't imagine that it's very high.
And I'm about to say something very radical.
Yes, sir.
That if an abortion occurs or is given to a rape victim and the child is aborted, we now have 2 victims of rape.
Exactly.
We now have 2 victims of incest.
Absolutely. So I am going to get to that, but first I want to comment on the sophistry of this argument. You know, that because there's no exception for rape or incest, the whole thing has to be thrown out, as though there's something really important about that exception when it occurs, but so seldom as to not be the basis for all decisions on the subject of abortion, which is the way she would like it to be. Okay, and then let's flip it and look to the other side. Okay, a child is conceived because of rape. You know, just break it down into the basis. Is it the child's fault that his mother was raped?
Not at all.
Not at all. Is his life somehow less valuable than the life of someone who was not conceived in rape?
Not at all.
Is he any less of a human being?
Absolutely not.
Now, I'm using the word he in the ordinary sense, meaning both sexes. I'm not going to talk about they. Yeah, so it's just another one of these smoke screens. The same with incest, you know, and incest was a way of life in back in England prior to the 20th century. And there are some problems with incest, you know. We all know about the hemophiliac son of the Tsar of Russia, but it just isn't it isn't that serious. It's not anywhere near as serious as taking the life of an unborn child. So this is another one of her straw men. You know, that because let me read it again. The Heartbeat Act makes no exception for victims of rape or incest. It negates every single piece of legislation this legislature has passed that purports to be in support of sexual assault victims. Just wrong. The sponsors are in effect saying to victims of sexual assault, we don't care about what happened to you. I think that's maybe you, Jane. You don't care what happened to them. So long as you can use sexual assault victims as a prop for your pro-abortion argument. And then the next paragraph, BWA, inquires. Now, I didn't know that BWA was a person. Jane Flores inquires of the 5 sponsors of the Heartbeat Act. How do you think this bill is going to work? Private individuals are not trained in enforcement of the way state actors are. And of course, the genius of the Texas bill is this. Turn on the law and order sign there, Jose. The Texas Heartbeat bill does not invoke the authority of any state official. Because if it did, that official could be enjoined from enforcing the act pursuant to Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So the Texas law has a novel means of enforcement. I mentioned this yesterday. It identifies abortion as tortious conduct. In other words, one who procures or does an abortion on a female commits a tort, a civil wrong, like killing someone in a car accident. That's a tort. Like negligently building a playground device on which a child is hurt. It's a tort. So doing an abortion or procuring an abortion or assisting an abortion is a tort. It's a civil wrong, and it gives rise to a cause of action to anyone who wants to file suit against the abortionist. And the damages are limited to $10,000. That's why this statute has not been declared unconstitutional. The Supreme Court had 2 cracks at it. And the Supreme Court said, under it in its shadow docket, and said, because of the novel means of enforcement, we're not going to suspend, we're not going to enjoin the Texas law. We'll take another look at it if it ever gets here on a petition for cert. I sent it back to the Supreme Court of Texas to determine, the Supreme Court said, perhaps the licensing officials for medical professionals can enforce the law. They sent it back to the Texas Supreme Court to act on that question. Texas Supreme Court said, no, they don't. So that's why that law is still in effect in Texas. And I hope will be in effect here until Roe versus Wade is overturned. But to say that the sponsors, in effect, are saying to the victims, we don't care about what happened to you. Wow. So Jane goes on, the private individuals are not trained in enforcement the way state actors are. When you put enforcement authority in the hands of the public, you're giving private rights of action to individuals who are not accountable for meeting any enforcement standards. Well, if you file suit in a court, a state, certainly in a federal court, and probably 90% of the state courts, you're going to face Rule 11. And if you don't have your ducks in line, you're going to have a problem. You are giving private rights of action to individuals who are not accountable for meeting any enforcement standards and essentially guaranteeing abuse of the process. With regard to the Texas law upon which this bill is passed, it has been declared unconstitutional in the district court because of the enforcement mechanism, having private individuals sue others without having suffered themselves. That's not right. It was declared unconstitutional in the district court, U.S. District Court, because of Roe and Planned Parenthood. Wrong, Jane. And there's the whole doctrine of standing does not have a constitutional footing. That's a court-made rule. The sponsors of the legislation criticize alleged violations of constitutional rights during the pandemic, but fully embrace such violations when it comes to, oh, not this tired argument again. This is the Michael Bavacqua argument, you know, because we protest against wearing masks, the checkpoints out on the road, the silly essential and non-essential classifications, the prohibition of Catholic sacraments, because we protest against these. And we shouldn't protest against, how does she phrase it? But fully embrace such violations when it comes to a woman's right to choose and appropriate access to the courts.
False equivalency.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of those, I'm not going to give her an F because she deserves so much less, Jose. And then she goes on to say, Council Flores here, there's also the issue of HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Abortion is a medical procedure and disclosing it is a HIPAA violation. Well, maybe for a doctor or a nurse. Yet according to the bill, a physician performing an abortion to preserve the health of a pregnant woman must execute a written document that specifies the medical condition of the pregnant woman that the abortion is asserted to address. Will the physician have to produce this document to someone who files a civil suit against the physician? This is a HIPAA violation as the reporting requirement of the bill. Now, according to Pete Scrow, no. And Pete claims that he researched that angle in the process of putting the bill together.
Well, this is kind of similar to the incest rape clause or whatever. It's having to procure an abortion as an emergency or medical necessity. I won't even say it has never existed. There is no such thing
as a medical emergency.
Right. Now, an example of a woman who is pregnant and is in need of chemotherapy, that's a different instance where the chemotherapy is not a direct it may cause an abortion or a miscarriage, but it's not a direct intentional abortion. And a mother can choose not to do chemotherapy or to continue. But as far as abortion, elective abortion because of medical emergency, I have not yet come across a case that describes this.
It's easy to talk about it, though, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, well, you know, it puts a mother's life in danger. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla.
Okay, so here we are, Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. I've got about, 7 more minutes to go here before we cross the finish line today. I could probably be able to finish Jane's Follies, although I have a feeling that there will be a second act. You probably read about Ziegfeld's Follies, Jose, back in the 30s.
No, I don't.
Famous Broadway show, yeah. And they were recurring. So I have a feeling that Jane's Follies will also recur. So Jane raises the HIPAA flag, and then her punchline is this: in our view, Bill 291 is a ridiculous piece of legislation, simply a ploy to get votes, and even more simply, unacceptable for our community of Guam or any other community. Now, let's stop for a second and examine thought processes, right? Now, what Jane is saying is that the five senators that introduced that bill, and those who are in favor of it, people like you and me, really have no interest in abortion, unborn children, taking their lives, or anything else. For us, it's no different than talking about raising taxes or cutting taxes or giving some benefit or taking it away. It's just politics. There's nothing more to this. Simply a ploy to get votes. Simply a ploy to get votes. So the ones that introduced it, they don't have their heart in it, so to speak, right? They're just very cynical, Machiavellian. Any trick that we can do, any ploy that we could use, any device, any artifice that will get us elected is fair game to us. We don't care about abortion, but we just think it's the kind of thing where we can really gin up a lot of votes about. That's what she's saying.
Yeah, that's. I question her analytical skills.
Well, I question her own good faith. Is belief in abortion such a darkening of the intellect that it causes you to be unable to recognize that others are not as warped as you are, that others may have really strong feelings about absolute essential elements like life. Who gets to live? Who gets to die?
Well, pro-abortionists will do everything and say anything so that you don't recognize that abortion kills a human being.
Exactly.
Period.
Yeah.
Simply, period.
Yeah. So bring on the ad hominem attacks. Got any straw piles there? Got any false equivalents? I gotta load up my shopping cart here because I got to have a lot of things to talk about other than answering Bob's question, which is, when is it okay to kill an innocent, helpless human? And I don't want to address that one because I know what the answer is. So instead of answering that question, I'm going to ask a lot of other really silly questions and do a lot of attacking and kind of equate the thought processes of the folks on the other side of the issue with my own. Because my own thought processes are capsulized so nicely by one of the folks that signed off on this other letter, Vanessa Williams. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. It's nothing, there's no morals here. There's no moral factor involved. There's no human factor involved. There's no humanistic factor involved. It's just sometimes it wouldn't be convenient to have a child, and if it's not convenient, why should we do it? Why should a woman do it if it doesn't fit into her plans? That's basically what Jane is saying. In our view, Bill 291 is a ridiculous piece of legislation, simply a ploy to get votes, and even more simply, unacceptably for our community of Guam or any other community. She's made up our minds for us. So if it's unacceptable for our community, Jose, I guess you and I are classic black sheep, right?
I have no idea why I'm for Bill 291. I don't deal with ridiculous. Silly, but not ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay, how much time have I got left here?
20 seconds or so.
20 seconds or so, huh?
But, this is interesting because I want to preface in a way or negate all those talks that men shouldn't talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
Because, number one, in a kind of a just way, but in all seriousness, as a former fetus, I have experience in the womb. Exactly. So I think I know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
And as a survivor
yeah.
of this battlefield of the womb, I think everybody should talk about it. And the conversation has to include men because we are failing, in a sense, as a gender, as men, as fathers. We have been failing our children. And it's time for us to start protecting them again.
I agree, Jose. And you get this sarcastic, well, sir, if you're really against abortion, don't have one. Yeah. Okay, well, we did a lot today. We'll be back again tomorrow, but right now it's time for me to say, let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Russian forces headed east on Jack Callahan, Fox News. Satellite imagery shows an 8-mile-long Russian military convoy headed toward the Donbas region of Ukraine, suggesting a change in strategy.
We expect this stage of the conflict could last a long time, and we should have no illusions that Russia is going to adjust their tactics and make them less brutal.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, Russia's defense ministry claims its missiles have destroyed Ukrainian ammo depots near Khmelnytsky and Kiev. There's no independent confirmation of that. America's top diplomat meeting virtually with his Indian counterpart on Monday evening.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said India has come down against violence by Russian troops.
The killing of civilians in Ukraine, calling for an independent investigation of these atrocities.
But India has been criticized for not directly condemning Russian President Putin. Minister of External Affairs Jai Shankar says India's position at the UN and elsewhere has been clear.
We are against the conflict. We are for dialogue and diplomacy.
While India is contributing to humanitarian efforts in Ukraine, President Biden earlier expressed concern about India increasing purchases of Russian oil.
Fox's Gernal Scott, the State Department ordering non-emergency staff members at its consulate in Shanghai to leave the city, which is under a new COVID-19 lockdown. The government releases its latest report on consumer prices a few hours from now. Economists are expecting the numbers will show inflation continues to run at a 40-year high. The administration already blaming rising prices for food, housing, and gasoline on what they're calling the Putin price hikes. Wall Street anticipating the Dow lost 413 points yesterday. NASDAQ dropped 299. Early morning Dow futures are trading about 160 points lower. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Stay on top of the latest news and information from Fox News. Listen and download the Fox News Hourly Update on your time. The trending stories you need anytime you want it. Listen and download now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts commercial-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Dana Perino, Kennedy, Ben Domenech, The Duffys, and many more. Subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
What are the most important issues facing Americans today? Every Tuesday, join me, Brett Baer, chief political anchor and executive editor of Special Report, and my rotating all-star panel of experts as we discuss the policies, practices, and possible solutions to the biggest and most important issues. You can hear new episodes every Tuesday. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts.
President Biden announcing new federal rules Monday to make it easier to trace guns assembled from kits.
To combat their use, the White House is expanding what it means to be a gun. In the new regulatory changes, the rule changes the current definition of a firearm under federal law to now include unfinished parts, like the frame of a handgun or the receiver of a long gun. Those parts will now need to be licensed and include serial numbers. Opponents, including the Firearms Policy Coalition, are threatening to sue the government. Writing in a statement, the FPC legal team is evaluating the final rule for litigation options and will be seeking plaintiffs in the near future.
Fox's Kevin Cork in Washington. Relatives of 5 of the 8 people who were shot and killed last year at a FedEx warehouse in Indianapolis by a former employee now suing FedEx, accusing the company of negligence and failing to ensure a safe workplace. Lawsuit in federal court contends the company knew or should have known of the gunman's potentially violent and dangerous